Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Brandon Wright. Got a very interesting topic for you guys tonight. I'll be joined by my guest, Allan and Julie. Now, Allan has experienced what he thinks is attacks from either demonic possessions or some sort of paranormal entities pretty much throughout his entire life up until a few years ago. And his wife is also on there to verify some of the instances that he's had, along with some of the stories that she's encountered while being around Allan. But before we dive into their story, if you've had an encounter or if you have a story to share, please contact me at tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can get a hold of me on Facebook. We're going to go ahead and dive on into the story with Allan and Julie, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to welcome Allan to the show. Now, Allan's had some experiences throughout his life that he was kind enough to come on the show tonight and talk with me. So, everyone, welcome Allan to the show. Allan, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate the platform to be able to let other people know what goes on in this world.
Yeah, definitely. And you said your wife's with you, too.
Yes, she is. Julie.
How you doing?
Good.
So, in your original message, you said stuff started when you're about 9 years old. Is that kind of where you want to start with, or?
Yeah, I figured I'd just put it all out there and just go from the beginning to the end, because it's been a I don't know if you can say an adventure, but it's been something.
Yeah. Well, feel free.
All righty. Yeah, we moved into a house in Rockford, Illinois, when I was about 8 years old. And it was a nice house, had a basement, had 3 bedrooms up on the main floor, and there was a bedroom in the basement. And one thing I noticed when we moved in, it was across the street from a cemetery, which, being a kid, how kids are, they're not like really interested in that kind of stuff and kind of scared of it. And I kind of felt that. But we had moved in, and there had been different little things building up, I guess you would say. You would hear noises, sounds, knocks. And, we really never paid that much attention to it and just went on. And I had my bedroom in the basement because I was the oldest of 3. And one night I was down there asleep, and it was probably, I guess, I don't know, 1:30 in the morning or so, somewhere in there. And I kept hearing this almost like a chanting sound, some kind of, rhythmic chanting or whatever you want to call it. And, being a kid, I was pretty scared, and got up and crept over to my door, and I was scared to death to open the door because I didn't know what was out there. And I kind of cracked it a little, was peeking out, and I seen it was like demons around the walls. And I tried to look over towards the stairs, and it was like, to me, at a kid at 8 years old, 9 years old, it was like the devil was standing right by the stairs in the corner. And I mean, give me just a second. My heart's kind of.
You're fine.
I mean, talking about it just brings it back like it's happening.
Yeah, I bet.
And anyway, the only thing I could think of, and I just said it and repeated it over and over and over, is God save me, God save me. And I just bolted, ran past him up the stairs. And I mean, that's all I could say is, God save me, please, God save me. And when I went through that door, my mom was on the other side, and she was sitting there crying, and she told me, she said I could hear it, and I reached for the door several times, but every time I did, I felt like I was going to die if I opened that door. And it was just, man, it was a horrible feeling. I'm telling you, scared. And that's kind of where it all started for me. Because from then on, I didn't know it was attacks at that age, but I kept getting like sharp pains, like in my ribs. It would be like I get one stab like in my right side, then I get a stab in my left side, then I get a stab in my right side, then my right side, then my left side. And I got that from then. And it wasn't like constantly, but it would just happen out of the blue. At first, we kind of thought, oh, well, I'm just cramping up. Maybe I need to drink water, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. But it kept on going on all my life. And I was like, something just ain't right. So, we ended up moving out of that house pretty quick. We didn't stay there long. And then we moved to Springfield, Illinois. And my parents had found a 3-story old. It was an old house, but it was huge. It was 3 stories, and then it had like an attic at the top, above the 3rd floor, and brought down the little steps, and you could go up them and get up there. But it had like, you walked in the front door, and it had like probably 4-foot wide steps going up to the next floor. But in the kitchen, I guess it used to be like because this was an old house. It was probably from 1800s. And they had stairs going up from the kitchen up the back to the upstairs, which they said had been for like servants to take food up to people or whatever they had to do, go up that way to clean, so they weren't going up the main stairs. And you'd always hear footsteps going up and down those back stairs. And the door shutting at the bottom or the door shutting at the top, even though the door wouldn't move, you could hear the sound of the door shutting. And at that time, I liked trains, and my mom had got me a train set, and we decided to put it up in the attic because there was plenty of room up there. And we didn't have it wasn't like storage area. We just kind of made it like a playroom in the attic, and sometimes I could hear my train set come on up there. I would hear voices and turn around, there'd be nobody there. It was just, and this stuff just continued to happen. I would hear things, turn around, nobody be there. I mean, my mom would hear noises, shutting doors or footsteps, and we just kind of dealt with it. You do what you got to do, I guess. And but I'd still get those stabbing pains every now and then. And oh man. Then my mom and that was actually my stepdad. They had gotten a divorce, and he had moved across town. And the one thing from my years of experience that I've noticed is, I think people that have like the paranormal, the Bigfoots, the UFOs, all that stuff, I think somehow once you're in tune with one of them, you kind of sometimes get exposed to the rest of it. I really do. Because after they had divorced, me and my brothers would go over to stay with him, and because my baby brother was his son, and we'd go over there, and me and my next younger brother, we always whenever we went over there, he had a house and it had an awning that come out over the porch, and from our bedroom we could climb out on the awning and look at the stars and talk and stuff like that, like kids do when you're that age. We were about 11 years old, 12 years old, and one night we were sitting out there and we were just talking, looking up, and we seen this craft, I'm gonna say that, just kind of do like almost like a triangle shape. It went down towards the left, and it was way up in the sky. Then it went over towards the right, and then it went back up to make the triangle, and then it just sat there, and then all of a sudden it just took off straight up and you couldn't see it anymore. And I was like, what in the world? My brother's like, you did see that, right? I'm like, yeah, I seen it. So, I mean, that was just kind of weird too, after, the other experiences I've been having. And what really, I guess, it was my brothers never had any kind of effect from any of that stuff that I've dealt with, any of the paranormal. But my mother, she had, and a matter of fact, my mom, when she had told me this story when she was, I guess, 8, 9 years old, when she was a child in Arkansas, that a UFO had actually come right over their neighborhood, like just above the trees, right over their neighborhood. And she told me, she said, the next day I got on the bus, and my friend that lived down the road got on the bus, and I just kind of looked at her and I said, did you see anything last night? And she looked back and said, yeah, did you see anything last? You know how little kids are. And they both had seen it. And that was in Arkansas. And then one time this is when I was older, and then I'll go back to that, but just on the UFO thing. When I was probably about 23, 24 years old, I flew out to Arizona to see and talk with my biological father. And I was sitting out there, and he had remarried, and my stepbrother, me and him were sitting out in the driveway, just looking up at stars and talking. And he had gone in to get a drink, and I was just looking at the stars, and I seen this ship looking thing way up in the sky going across. It got to this star and it just disappeared. You couldn't see it moving anymore. And he come back out, and I was telling him, I said, dude, you ain't gonna believe what I just seen. I said, I seen this thing going across the sky. As a matter of fact, you see that one that's moving? I said, it was on about the same path, but when it got to that star thing, it disappeared. And he goes, okay. And we were watching it, and this one did the same thing. So there was 2 of them that I seen, and he seen one of them. And that's why I kind of think that they're all kind of interconnected somehow. I don't know. It's just a feeling I have. I could be totally wrong, but then, after that incident with seeing the UFO in Illinois and still having the attacks, I mean, they were sporadic, but I had them. And
I don't want to cut you off or anything, but do you think the UFO and the attacks had any relation, or is that just something that you think just kind of happened? The attacks weren't related with UFO sightings or anything like that?
yeah, I think the attacks were more paranormal, demonic. And I think I just happened to see UFOs. I don't know. I just kind of, but how, I guess I'm still kind of out there about how do some people see stuff and hear stuff and feel stuff and others don't, you
Yeah.
know? And I feel like once you've had one experience, then you can have another one with the other things that are out there.
Basically, once you have one, it kind of opens you up for more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. It's,
sorry to cut you off. I was just kind of wondering, but
oh, no, it's perfectly fine. I mean, I wonder myself, you know, it gets me, my brain has done a lot of different things, a lot of different ways over the years because of the experiences. And I just, I don't know.
but
The,
anyway, but after the UFO, you still were having those attacks.
oh, yeah. Yeah. I had them all the way up through 2017, 2016, 17. It was 17. Yeah, through 2017. And a matter of fact, I mean, I almost feel like, and actually it was the same thing. And I think because, all right, here's this today. I was over at the neighbors and I was talking to them and everything. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, he's going to call tonight and I got to go through this. And I got to explain everything. And I literally had an attack at the neighbor's house. And and what I was taught how to defend myself is say, in the name of Jesus Christ, you have no right over me. You have to go to the dry places. And I'll get to this in a little bit about the preacher that I found that actually helped me.
Okay.
But, oh man, I'm sorry. Give me just a second.
You're fine. You take your time.
Oh, all right. And then I guess after we seen that UFO, I still had occasional attacks and stuff. And my mom met my second stepdad, and he was from Kentucky. So we ended up moving to Kentucky when I was 14. And we had moved down here, and I was still occasionally getting those attacks and just trying to deal with them. And I really, my mom took me to the doctor, and they checked me and said I was perfectly healthy, perfectly fine. So I don't understand how I can get these sharp. I mean, it feels like something's just being run like a spear going through you. Is what it to me was what it felt like. But I was checked out from head to toe. Perfect health. Ran track and cross country in high school. Went to state, all that stuff. Perfect health. But I had these attacks. And then we heard strange, it didn't matter where I went. I would hear strange noises and voices, and, there would be nothing there. And one time, me and two of my friends, I guess I was 15, there was a park, Iroquois Park, that was probably half to 3/4 of a mile from the house. And one night about 8 o'clock, which it was already dark, we rode our bikes up there. And this park it's huge. It's got like a big hill in it. I say hill. It's probably what'd you say, 500-600 feet?
Yeah, it has an overlook.
Yeah, it's got an overlook. You can actually look from it to downtown from this park in Louisville. And anyway, we rode up there and we hit our bikes in the woods because it was wooded. It was a huge park. They had horse trails, golf course. Around the front, they had basketball courts, frisbee golf, all this. But anyway, we hit our bikes and we climbed up the back of the hill to the top of the park. We were going to go up and look at the lookout. And we didn't want to ride all the way around to the front of the park where the road was to ride up there. But as we were coming over the top of the hill, we seen a bonfire looking thing going on. And there was people up there with hoods on, like hooded garments. And there was animals hanging from the tree. And this was just really, with everything I've felt and dealt with up to that point, I said, no, guys, we got to get out of here. I felt this like fear just hit my chest. And I said, come on, guys, we got to go. And I just turned around and I hauled ass out of there. I was done. I wasn't dealing with that. I've dealt with enough in my life up to that point. I wasn't dealing with that. And I get home and I told my mom, and she's like, you boys didn't need to be out there. And, nothing really, she didn't call nobody or nothing. She just let it go. And so life goes on, growing up. And then just tried to ignore the voices, the sounds, and move into my next stage of life, adulthood. To see what was going to happen next. It's kind of how I lived my life with this stuff. But one thing I will tell you is my uncle always came down from Illinois to Kentucky for Thanksgiving every year. And everybody was at Mom's house and everybody would stay. We'd play cards late and, hang out and talk. And because it was the one time a year where my uncle and some family members from Illinois come down. And my mom's upstairs, you'd go up and there's like an open room with a bed in it. And then there's a door to the next bedroom. And my uncle, which he was a Vietnam vet, he's seen a lot of stuff and, pretty much wasn't scared of nothing. Was up there getting ready to go to sleep, and he said he had just fallen asleep and he heard this god awful banging, and he opened his eyes and it looked like this great big huge thing was trying to beat on the door to get into that other bedroom, which is where my son was actually at. And he hollered, he said, get away from there. And that thing turned and looked at him. It freaked my uncle out so bad. He said it was a demon. It had to have been. He never went upstairs in my mom's house ever again. He said, I will not go up there.
Did he ever say what it looked like?
He said it kind of had like slatted eyes, or slitted eyes. He said they were like dark black, and it was like just fire red from the face all the way down. And it was just, but it had like huge hands with claws at the end, and it was just beating on the door. I mean, he said that's enough. I don't even want to talk about it no more. And I think my family's actually had some different things all through our family heritage, because my uncle had also dealt with which my cousins and stuff have all said is true, because I asked them, and I asked my uncle, and I asked other cousins that didn't live, that weren't my uncle's kids. that had stayed up there at his house in Illinois. They had like a monkey man creature that would come out of their closet. He said it had like a human face, but the rest of the body looked like a monkey.
That's strange.
Very strange. But yeah, they had dealt with that for years and years and years until he had moved. And that had actually been the house that he had bought with his first wife. And it was, yeah, I mean, there was the neighbors, everybody knew about this thing. I mean, it wasn't just like, let's keep it a secret. No, my family's kind of like, whether you believe us or not, here's what the hell happened. Take it for what it's worth. And but yeah, that's just a little bit on my uncle there. And to back up, kind of when he says something, I mean, you can take it to the bank. And so life goes on, and I actually dealt with a death in 2003. My first wife had passed away of a massive heart attack. And it's like I got really angry and said some things that I probably shouldn't have said towards God. And now that, he come back around and picked me up, though. He's a forgiving God. I hated him, didn't want nothing to do. And actually, the attacks and stuff got worse after she had passed. And there's actually probably 3 years I do not remember, from 2003 to 2007. So maybe, 2007, maybe 4 years. Shit. I mean, it was a bad time. And then the attacks would get worse. I mean, I couldn't remember things. And my family, I met who's now my wife, Julie, before I ended up going into a hospital. And the pastor in there actually prayed over me, and he would pray every day. But then it was like, once I got the help I needed and I got out, because I had to deal, with the death and anger and all that when you lose somebody. But then once I got out, it was like the attacks were just daily. I mean, I'd be standing at the sink and bam, I'd get a sharp, like I was being stabbed in the ribs, like it was coming through my back, and just different things. I'd hear voices. I could smell, which this is, I mean, people aren't, I don't know what the people are going to think, but I could literally smell like the scent and the perfume type that my first wife had worn. I could smell it around me. I would hear voices, like whispers. Couldn't make out what it was saying, but it was like little whispers. And I'd turn and, nothing there. And then, so I just kind of, you just got to put one foot in front of the other. And then me and Julie, we ended up getting married in 2010. And she's a great woman. God sent me an angel. I swear he sent me an angel. She's fantastic. I don't know why I was so blessed, but I thank him. But we had gotten married, and we ended up taking a trip to Red River Gorge with the kids, which is in Kentucky. It's a pretty big place. That's where people come from around the world to do climbing and stuff. It's pretty big in Kentucky. And we were there, and John was out back during the day building this fire, taking it apart. He loved to play with fire, John did. And he'd do that. And then that night we were all inside, and then me and Julie and Josh, my oldest son, we walked out back, and he was, all right, if you can picture a cabin, you got the back right and the back left side. And then, like, it was probably, what do you say, across, how far?
60, 70 feet.
Yeah, the back of it was at least 60, 70 feet across. And he was on one side and we were on the other. And you got to realize Red River Gorge is it's like a great big forest. I mean, we're talking, it's huge. You have to have passes to go to the back country in it to camp. So it's huge. And anyway, we're sitting out there, and he's over on one side, and me and Julie's on the other. And he goes, "Good Lord, did one of y'all have gas or something? That is horrible." And I'm like, "No." And we couldn't smell anything over where we were on the, because we're about 60 feet away. And then the smell did finally get to us, but then he couldn't smell it over there. I said, "Good Lord, now I know what you're talking about." He said, "It's not over here now, the smell." And I said, and me, I really, I kind of watched a few Bigfoot shows and this and that, but never really, I was like, yeah, maybe, okay, but I don't know. So there was a can of bug spray for like off sitting on the picnic table. So I take it and I go hit it twice on the table. I said, well, maybe it's Bigfoot. And about that time, we hear a knock come out of the woods. And I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like, well, maybe they are real. I said, I think it's time to go inside. So we go inside. But the weird thing is, because after that, then I did a little searching, and apparently Bigfoot liked to watch children playing and doing different things.
Yeah, that's what they say.
So about behind the fire pit, probably 15, 20 feet, the grass was about 4.5, 5 feet tall all along the back. It's like they cut, but they, left that tall grass back there. And you couldn't see it if you were standing out there, but I was in the kitchen looking out the back over that, and I could see a big depression behind, probably 6, 7 inches behind the front of that tall grass. And so I go out there and look, and I was spread it open, and there was a big lay down there. And I'm talking bigger than a deer, and bigger than a bear. And I was like, John was out here yesterday messing with that fire. Take you out, because he was out there for what, hour and a half?
He was about 15 or maybe.
Yeah.
We could see him.
Yeah, we could see him, but I'm just saying he was out there for about an hour and a half or so messing with it.
Yeah.
And anyway, a huge lay down. I mean, the grass was all pressed down. And, then I was like, nope, I'm done. Close it, I walked back out and went up and told Julie what I'd seen. And yeah, and then we ended up heading back to Louisville. And but anyway, the house we lived in, I was still getting those attacks. It would be excruciating. I mean, it would take my breath away where I couldn't breathe. Is how bad the stabbing pains would be in my ribs. And I mean, I would literally just grab onto something and I'd go and tighten up as tight as I could to try and get it to stop. And anyway, it kept on. And a friend of mine kind of did some amateur ghost hunting stuff. And they came over one night a matter of fact, it was on Halloween, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were down in the basement and we actually caught like EVPs on a voice recorder down there. And I heard different things, like the fireplace in the living room. It's a brick fireplace. There's no electric on a brick fireplace. I would stick one of those the amp meters or whatever against the fireplace, and it would go up like there was some kind of source of power there on a brick fireplace.
Yeah.
And then I'd move it to the left about 10 or 12 inches, nothing. Move it to the right, nothing. Move it up, nothing. Move it down, nothing. Put it back in that spot, it lighted up. It was just weird. Because the only reason I found that spot is because I was taking it. I was like, okay, it shouldn't be nothing right here. And then I was just moving it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth down the fireplace. And then it lit up. I was just like, I'm going to figure this stuff out one way or another. But yeah, it should have not done that.
I mean, if I can interject, and I don't know what you plan to say, so I hope I'm not messing anything up. But I mean, I had lived in that house about 20 years before, with my first husband and the kids before I met Allan and we married. But nothing, I hadn't really noticed anything strange going on. It was almost like the combination of Allan and I together sort of triggered things to happen, or he brought things to the house or whatever. I mean, there were pantry doors that would open after we got married. I know the kids went to school one day and we were both still at the house, and I heard a big crash in the bathroom, and a hairbrush that was laying on the bathroom sink was in the middle of the floor, broken in half. I mean, it was a decent heavy plastic hairbrush. I mean, there was no reason it should have fallen more, and the velocity of it to break in half like that, things just didn't make sense. We'd hear like knocking. Like I remember being in the shower and hearing like somebody banging, like they were trying to get in the house and get out of the shower. You're dripping wet. You're trying to see what's going on, and it would be nothing. It's just, and I heard a voice in the basement and I've never experienced that before, but I was downstairs looking for something, and my son was in the other room in the basement, but on the other side of the basement with music playing, and I was over on the one side by myself, and I was searching through some boxes, and I heard this voice say, "That's my money and I want it now." I don't know why, but that's what I heard. And I turned around and I went over to my son who was in the other room, and I had to go through a door to get to him. And I said, "What did you say?" And he said, "What, Mom?" I mean, he had no clue what I was talking about, didn't say the voice, but I heard it clear as day. But none of that ever happened until, Allan was brought into the picture. So it kind of made us both wonder, what was actually going on.
I know some people are like a conduit like they can bring that energy with themselves for whatever reason.
It's like
Certain,
it's attached to them.
Right.
yeah, like certain energies are attached to people and it just follows them around.
Yeah. And I don't know that I have any. I mean, maybe I have a little perception. I don't know, but I mean, I think the two of us together just kind of started a storm there for a while.
Yeah. Well, you'd had the experience when you were younger about the wall breathing.
Yeah, at my dad's house, I remember being at the back of the house. He has a bedroom, and I was with an uncle, and I turned and looked, and the wall just kind of, it was like uh, it just got bigger and then got smaller, almost. Yeah, it was just, it was weird, but I don't know. I'll let you.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I was going to mention that brush thing because that was pretty freaky. Yeah. But yeah, we ended up selling the house and we moved into an apartment. And yeah, things went from bad to worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were actually laying in bed in the master bedroom with, you could walk straight into it had like a little makeup area, like,
it was an older apartment.
Yeah,
so
it had like a makeup
70s
area
style.
and a big mirror and lights. And then you'd walk a little bit farther and then you'd walk into where the tub was and toilet and everything. But we were laying in bed. We had just laid down and we were laying there and we hear this smack on that glass. And I jumped up, went in there, flipped the light on, and there was this like crooked hand claw print. That's the only way I can explain it. I tried to twist my hand every which way to see if I could match it up. It wasn't happening.
And I did too.
And Julie tried it. It was really, really weird. And then, I still had the attacks of like I was being stabbed through the ribs, and it just really painful and dealing with that. And then we had an incident, and I found out that I guess if you drink a little, it kind of relaxes you, and it really, I guess, opened me up. And I had an incident. Was I in the bedroom?
Well, I mean, neither one of us are big drinkers, but I mean, it kind of happened at the house too.
Yeah.
You had some incidents, but I mean, there was this one particular night that he had drank a few drinks, and so would I, but he just, and to be honest, I was telling him, I mean, it's almost like part of my memory's been suppressed of it. I don't know. It was just, I remember it. I don't really want to remember it. He wasn't himself. And actually we were out when this happened, and I said, leave your truck. We had both driven there, and I said, leave your truck here. I'll drive us home. He got mad, like an outrageously mad, which is not his character, and said he was driving. And I mean, we weren't far from the apartment, but the whole way there, I was just praying that nothing would happen. And we got to the apartment. He was mad at me. That's how it usually kind of manifested through, or whatever you want to say. He was mad at me for insinuating that he couldn't drive, is how I first took it. And I think when we got to the apartment, you basically threw your keys at me. So I had both sets of keys, and walking in, and again, this isn't his character. It's just what happened. This never ever happens any other time. he was in this weird zone, sort of like not himself. And I had kind of seen this before and was a little bit prepared for it. We had 2 dogs, and he went to the bedroom, and I was trying to take the dogs in and out. Um, it's just, he kind of was going to get sick, and he kept like keeping his head down. He never vomited or anything like that. But I mean, he just, I know at one point you were on the floor. He has a bad back and he can't move, the way he was moving. And I know alcohol can sometimes help with that, but I mean, he would just kind of be on the floor, and then there's just was a strange movement about him. I mean, he would like look up and move and do things that normally he wouldn't do. And no, just to make a long story short, he ended up in the bathroom, but he was sitting on the toilet actually, and he kept his head down. And I thought, okay, because at one point I did leave him. I apologize for jumping in and out, but I've kind of tried to forget some of this. At one point he laid down, and I stayed out in the living room because I was trying to stay away from him. And I thought, okay, he'll sleep this off, everything will be fine. And so then maybe an hour passed, and I heard noise, and I went to check on you, and that's when you were in the bathroom. And he kind of had his head down, and I couldn't see his face. And that's kind of what tricked me, was because he just kind of had his head down while he was sitting on the toilet. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he nodded his head, yes. And so I went on and laid down, but I was smart enough I kept both sets of keys, and I stayed fully dressed, and I laid down in the bed. And when he got up out of the bathroom and he came and laid down next to me, he wasn't himself, and he started doing this weird breathing, like this kind of like heavy breathing. And I just got up. I mean, I was prepared because I was still dressed, and I got up, and I got to the door as quick as I could. And when I got to the bedroom door, he was already like sitting up in bed with his arms stretched out on both sides of him, which was really strange, like with his back against the wall, which you would never sit like that.
No.
And I looked back and I said, "I love you, but I'm going to leave, and I'll be back in the morning." And I shut the door, booked it down the hallway, grabbed my shoes, and I ran out of the apartment without my shoes on, and had my purse and everything. And
Well, I remember you also saying that I was talking in a language you couldn't understand.
yeah, you do. He would, and that kind of goes back to the house too. And I'm sorry to jump in and out with that, but yeah, there would be like this. It wasn't English. It was just kind of like a gibberish language at certain times, not the whole time, but just like if you're just trying to make sure somebody's okay, and they're just kind of doing this gibberish stuff. And but I left, and
I know you said that when I was in the floor that I raised straight up out of the floor, and I couldn't do that with the way my back is.
Right.
Yeah.
But I drove away, not knowing really what to do. It was raining that night. I remember that, and thinking, okay, it's like 2 a.m, and what am I going to do? And the only thing I could think of was to drive to his parents' house, because I knew that his mom would kind of have an idea of possibly of what I was thinking of talking about from the past history. So I headed that way, and he ended up calling me and demanding his car keys, the keys to the truck. And I said, I have them. I'll be back in the morning, just to go to bed. And it still wasn't him on the phone. It just wasn't. and I think you ended up hanging up on me, and then I called you back or something, and we ended up talking more. And then the more we talked that second time, I could tell that, that it was more you,
Yeah.
that whatever was there
I
had
know
kind of
you
passed.
said too that, like in between some of that stuff, I kept saying, God help me, God help me.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
You could
between
tell it
the
was a
stuff.
struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I still was leery, and I mean it was pretty scary. I mean, so now I like always want to like look at his face and see. I don't know what I would have seen different, but I've it's just weird when you can flash from one total personality to the next.
Yeah.
Um,
It
And
basically
actually,
sounds almost like a demonic possession.
yeah, that's what we were thinking.
yeah.
And I had contacted a church in the area
That we had been going to.
that we had been going to, and I explained, I didn't really want to relive the story over again, but I, had gone through everything with them, and they had sent me, that had another pastor call me, the whole 9 yards of having to tell the story over and over. And basically, the bottom line was that he needed to seek psychiatric help. And I knew that wasn't what it was. But nobody that, I don't know how a church can believe that there's a God and things are good and not believe that there's bad and things are evil. But I mean, that's kind of what we were facing.
I don't think modernized churches these days really go into that old demonic possession. They don't want to have to deal with it.
Anybody. Yeah, they don't want to offend nobody.
So I mean, and then we ended up moving, and I'll let him.
Yeah, my wife had gotten a job out in the eastern part of the state, and we moved to Urban, Kentucky, and I was still getting the attacks, and we were still dealing with the knocks and the sounds and different things. But it was a slower pace in eastern Kentucky, and we had a fire pit out beside the house and different things. And matter of fact, I would do the if we had a fire and we were out there, I'd do like a couple wood knocks and say, well, maybe I can draw him in, just talking about Bigfoot. And I'm not trying to jump back and forth, but this is kind of how it went. It's exactly how it went. And then I'd do that. And we lived there probably about,
lived there a couple years.
I know, but it was about year and a quarter.
That was that James.
No, about the Bigfoot.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was about a year and a half. And one morning, my back, like she said, I've got bad back problems. I've had one surgery, probably need 2 or 3 more. Got degenerative disc disease, bulging discs, all that stuff. And anyway, it was hurting really bad. And so I get up because I don't want to disturb her in the bed so that she can rest. So I get up and I go out on the front porch. And we're up on this hill. I mean, we're up, you can see over the town from where we are. There's only one hill that's taller than the one we're on. Yeah, there was one that was taller than the one we were on. And but anyway, I'm sitting out there, and when I first walked out there, I could hear the crickets and the different things. And I'm sitting there looking at my phone, just trying to take my mind off the pain. And Then all of a sudden, I'm looking at my phone, and I hear all the crickets and everything stop. I don't hear nothing, and I hold my phone. I'm just kind of looking around, and then all of a sudden, I hear this. This is exactly what it sounded like to me, only 10 times louder. It was like, "Ugh, whoa, ugh," just like that, only 10 times louder. It scared my insides rattled. I mean, it was the scariest thing I've ever heard. And it sounded like it was right on top of me. That's how loud the sound was. And I went inside and grabbed my 44 and was peeking out the window like, holy crap, what was that? And I told my wife the next morning and told the neighbor, and I told him where the sound came from. I pointed in the direction, and he said, well, my dad owns that land over there up that hill, that side of that hill. He said, you ain't going to get up through there unless you got ropes. It's steep. You got to have ropes to climb up that hill. I said, well, that's where the sound came from, and this is what I think. He said, well, there's strange things that go on over there is all I'm going to say. And so that was kind of weird. And then it was probably maybe a month or two later, my wife, one of our dogs had woke her up to go out, and Spike, which was like I'm not scared of nothing. I mean, he's tried going after coyotes and everything else when he was been outside. He wasn't scared of nothing. And she took him out and hooked him to his run that we had right there off the porch. You go down about 4 steps, and then we could hook him to a run, and he could run out and do his thing and come back, because we didn't want to let him just run. And she was going to smoke a cigarette, and she started lighting, and then she said she smelled something really bad. And then she was like, he don't know I'm out here. Talking about me. Said, Allan don't know I'm out here. So anyway, she goes back in the door, and when she does, she goes to lock the door. And as soon as she locks the door, Spike, which isn't scared of anything, does kind of like a little yelp, like, don't leave me out here.
And he was barking to get out, but he didn't say a word he didn't bark a word when I had him outside until I turned that latch, and then he was like,
yeah, like a little yelp, like, let me back in.
The smell was horrible. I've never smelled anything like it. I kind of kicked myself for not thinking, because I smelt it when I went out. It was just I don't know how you would describe it. Body odor, wet dog, feces, kind of all just wrapped into one. And so I went in and woke him up to just tell him what it was going on. And he came out, and
yeah, I grabbed my pistol again, and I went out there, and I got the dog back in, and he as soon as I unclipped him, boy, he shot straight to the door.
I could still smell it.
And you could still faintly smell it out there when I went out. But it was quiet. I mean, it was quiet. Couldn't hear nothing. And in the country, you hear all kinds of crickets and frogs and, whatever.
Yeah, I live in the country, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was, you could have dropped a pin and heard it. And that was really weird. I mean, we never visually saw them, but between what I heard and the experience she had, Yeah, we're pretty much past the wondering, because I've never heard a scream like that in my life. And, it wasn't no bobcat or mountain lion or, none of that crap.
No, I think there's something out there that it's not really been explained what it is. I'm not going to make any
Right.
assumptions. I haven't seen anything like that, so I
Right.
can't say one way or the other, but I definitely think there is something strange out there.
Yeah. I mean, I physically, visually have not seen it, but I heard knocks, I heard screams, we've smelt. I mean, the only thing left to do is see, and I don't think I really want to see it. And anyway, back to the other stuff. We were cleaning out some stuff, and my wife was wanting me to take it to this donation center that helped, needy families. And I took it down to this little place that sells it, and then they use the money to help people pay their electric and all that different stuff, pay their gas. And
Eastern Kentucky.
it was in Eastern Kentucky, which is a very poor part of the state. And anyway, I went in there to donate the stuff, and the people that were in there were filling in for the people that actually run it. And I was talking to them, and they told me that they're the pastors up at Hope on the Hill. And so I told them, well, we'll come check your church out. And me and Julie ended up going there, and I really liked them because they taught straight from the Bible. It wasn't what the preacher thought. It wasn't, well, we got to make it comfortable for everybody. It was straight from the Bible. And I really enjoyed his sermons, and he really helped me talking a lot of things out. And I actually went up and helped at the church. And if they had to go out of town, I'd go up and make sure everything was okay at the church. And, but I finally confided in him and told him that I keep getting these attacks that, it was like spears running through me, or, it would just hurt and take my breath away. I couldn't breathe. And we were actually in the basement of the church, which that's where the fellowship hall was. And we were down there, and, in some basements, how they got the poles every so often for structural support. I was getting ready to walk past one, and I had those attacks. I had like one go in on each side, right and left, and it just took my breath away. I grabbed that pole and I just started, I can't breathe. Oh my God, Lord help me. And James laid his hand on me and started rebuking and praying over me, and it stopped immediately. Immediately. And I was like, he's like, how long has this been going on? And I told him. And give me just a second. I literally sat there and cried about how long it's been going on. And because it started in like 76, 77, and this was 2017, 16, somewhere, 17. Yeah, because it was right before we moved out here to Oklahoma. And he prayed over me and it stopped immediately. And then we talked about it and I cried because it was just, I dealt with so much and I told him everything. And, we kept having prayer sessions and different things. And then one day we were going to the church, me and the wife, and we got there and I literally couldn't go in the church. I kept getting attacks. I couldn't open the door to the church. I kept getting attacked. And they come out there and we were out there, 30, 35, 40 minutes from what you said? Yeah. They prayed over me and I had literally gone from the front of the church over to the corner of the church. They were praying over me. I was spitting stuff out of my mouth. They were just praying. I couldn't hardly breathe at times. It was horrible. But then after that, the attacks ceased. And then and I'm going to tell you what's really weird is James had told me, he said, I don't know why, but when we had moved here, it was like God told us we needed to be here. And then we were there, and then they really helped me, and they did what needed to be done to help me. And then we moved. My wife had gotten a job out here in Oklahoma, and so we moved out here. And it wasn't 2 or 3 months after that they went back to Texas. So it's like God put them there, knowing that we would be there. And then after that was done, he sent them home, and we had moved out here. So God is good. That's all. I got to say that because for that to happen, they lived in Texas. They were in Irving, Kentucky. And you look Irving, Kentucky up, it's a population of what? 600, 700?
And now if you get those, you know how to do it.
And yeah, and he told me how to deal with the problem. You rebuke them and you tell them they have to go to the dry places in the name of Jesus Christ. A matter of fact, he gave me 2 bottles of holy oil. I bless my house every few months. I bless us with it. And until today, knowing that I had to talk with you on this, I hadn't had an attack, but when I thought about it at my neighbors, I got attacked. Oh, he's going to let the secret out, is how I felt. In my mind, I saw, you need to let people know. It might help someone.
Yes, definitely. So,
and go ahead.
You haven't really had any more attacks since then, and today was just one of the first time you've had one in a while?
Since Kentucky, yeah.
And I guess too, if I can interject, we were searching for answers, and so when all that was going on at the house and at the apartment and whatnot, we were watching the paranormal shows and trying to find answers through all the things that are out there. And one of the things we kind of figured out on our own is just to leave it alone.
Yep.
We don't watch ghost hunters, or it's like the more we kind of opened our minds up to different things and saw different things, the worse things got. At least that's how it felt for us. So
Yes.
we just sort of leave it alone. You know, the kids say they want to go on a ghost hunt or something, and we're like, yeah, we're not going, and we don't recommend you do that either. But you know, we just leave it alone.
Yep.
I actually just got warned last week by someone else claiming when you start looking into things, some things start looking back at you.
Exactly. They do. And trust me.
So, I mean, you know, we had the little meters and different things trying to figure
Voice recorders,
we were just
everything.
trying to figure out stuff.
Trying to figure out who was attacking, why they were attacking.
It's actually making things worse at least in our case.
Yeah.
And, don't recommend it.
No. Because once you open that door, it's hard to shut.
Yeah, I've talked to several other people, and that's kind of what they've said too, is once you've opened that portal, that doorway, or whatever that it ends up being, it's really hard to contain it.
Yep. 100% agree. I mean, I still get choked up and teary-eyed about it because I know the pain I went through. I know what I dealt with. It was no joke. It wasn't my imagination. It was physical pain. It was mental. It was, you know, it just rips at every fiber of. And then when people don't believe you, then you start second guessing yourself. But you know the pain you're feeling. You know. I mean, when that church said you need to get mental help, I'm like, I'm mentally fine. I know what the hell's happening. You know?
Yeah, I'm not really a big organized religious type person. I think there's a lot of flaws when it comes to certain churches and religious type things. I believe in higher powers and everything else, but I'm not going to sit there and there's just too many different variations of the same.
Well, with our pastor that was there, they also had friends of theirs that were pastors from Tennessee. And they actually got documented things of where they've actually done exorcisms and connection. I mean, he told me one story of this lady was in the hospital and they said she was dying of cancer. And they asked him to come by and pray for her. And when he had gotten there, he stood at the door and he seen like a demon sitting on her shoulder, just kind of gnawing at her neck, is the way he explained it. And he asked the family to leave, and he went in there and he prayed and prayed and prayed. And they had done x-rays and seen this big thing, you know, up in her neck and stuff. And he prayed and prayed and prayed. He was in there for, I think they said 3 or 4 hours. And anyway, when he come out of there, she was awake. She was talking. They did an x-ray the next day and there was nothing. So I'm just telling you what I was told, and by the people that I know that I was told it by, I 100% would take it to the bank.
Yeah.
Because I know what they did for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I'm glad that you haven't been experiencing these stuff. I'm actually kind of a little upset that you had one today. You hadn't had one in the last 4 or 5 years. So,
Yeah. I think it was just, I guess in my opinion, it was the demons trying to exercise a little muscle because I was getting ready to expose them. But God said, no, you're going to help somebody by telling your story.
yeah, it could cause and help someone else to figure out a way to fight thirst as well.
Yep.
Because I think it is a constant battle. It's not like something just totally leaves you alone.
No.
I mean, you're constantly trying to
Yeah.
be on the good side of things, for lack of better words.
Yeah, I don't think they ever truly 100% go away.
No.
So,
You just have to learn how to contain them.
yeah. Well,
And I was lucky enough to find somebody that helped me.
yeah. I do appreciate you sharing your story with me because, again, I think it's beneficial for people to hear this, and I hope it ends up helping others. And I do thank both you guys for talking with me tonight.
Yeah. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to get my story out there and the things we've dealt with. But I do think I don't know how it's connected, but I think once you're open to one, that the rest of them are very possible. The experiences between whether it's the demons, the paranormal, the UFOs, the Bigfoot, whatever you want to say, I think once you're open to a lot of stuff, and that's,
You become more susceptible to everything else.
yep.
Okay, well, again, thank you for sharing your story with me. It's definitely very interesting. And like I said, I'm glad you haven't had to deal with any of this stuff in the last few years. And if you've had anything else that comes up after this or anything, just let me know. And I'd like to know anything else, but hopefully you don't have to deal with anything else.
Yeah. I hope so too.
Okay,
God willing.
Yep. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All righty.
You have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Mhm.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
And that's our show, everyone. Again, I want to thank Allan and Julie for coming out tonight and talking with me. I know it's not very easy for them, but I definitely appreciate them coming out and sharing their encounters. And again, if you've had an experience, story to share, you can always contact me at tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, or you can get a hold of me on Facebook, and we'll try and get you out for a future episode. Good night, everyone.